All right. Okay, we are live. Thanks everybody for joining us for another Data Mesh Learning panel. I'm Paul, head of community for Data Mesh Learning Community. Today you're here for a data governance and data mesh panel. Yeah, we have a really exciting list of panelists. Before we get into that, I'm just going to go over some things that are coming up. So first, next week on Tuesday, we have the Data Mesh Learning monthly roundtable, and the topic of discussion will be role of humans versus technology and automation. So yeah, if you haven't been to one of those before, these are interactive discussions. So we break out into breakout groups and we talk about a few questions related to the topic of the day. So those are really fun. Andrew will be there, Karin will be there. And then, of course, also we have Amy Regatta and Juanes Rosiers. So if you can join us, you should do that next Tuesday. And then later in the month, on August 28th, Amy Regatta, has a new series, monthly interview series called Data Chronicles. And so we had Yulia Chakchova last month, and then this month we'll have Andrew Jones, principal engineer from Go Cardless. So check that out later in the month. And then, of course, we post all of our talks to YouTube. So if you miss them, including this one, you can, or if you really want to watch it again, you can go to YouTube and watch all of our recorded sessions. The only sessions that we don't record are the monthly roundtables because those are more interactive, but all of our sort of webinars are posted there. And we will also, coming soon, be posting the audio of our talks to Spotify. So it'll just be another way for you to consume this material if you want to kind of have it on the background or don't need the video. You can come check it out on Spotify. And then, of course, if you want to get in on the conversations, we have a pretty large Slack group. So if you scan that QR code, that'll get you the invite to the Data Mesh Learning Slack group. You can interact with peers, ask questions, and then also help answer questions that people have about their data mesh journey. So definitely check that out if you aren't already part of the Slack group. And then last but not least, we have the Data Mesh Learning website where we have hundreds of resources. We list all of our events, lots of use cases. So it's just a good place to get more information about data mesh. So that's it for me, and I will hand things over to Andrew, our moderator.
Thanks, Paul, and good afternoon, everybody. I'm really pleased that we're now on Spotify because that means my daughter might actually start listening to these things because she starts getting very excited when things are on Spotify and she can actually stream them. So this afternoon's all about data governance in data mesh, and we've got a great panel this afternoon to explore the issues that we want to surface. Probably a little bit about me, and then I'll get Karin, Kinder, and Maarten to do the introduction. I'm Andrew Sharp. I'm a principal consultant for a data consultancy based in Leeds in the north of England. We work with a lot of different clients who are trying to deploy data mesh. I've done 15 or so years doing data governance, so I'm from the classically trained community of data professionals. So very exciting to explore what that means from a data mesh perspective. So perhaps if I can hand over to Karin, who can introduce herself.
Yes, sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Karin Håkansson, and I'm located in Sweden, in Stockholm. And I'm self-employed as a consultant. So I work as a consultant in data governance with a focus on data mesh implementations. So my background is I've been working a little bit of everything. I started out within business, moved into IT, became a software developer, and then a data engineer, and then moved on to more manager roles, and then in the end ended up in data governance. So yeah, that's me. Should I hand over to Kinda maybe?
Thank you, Karin. Hello as well also from my side. I'm Maarry, and I am currently the Director of Data Governance and Business Intelligence at Prima. Prior to that, I was the data governance lead at HelloFresh. And in both those roles, I was lucky to get introduced to data governance as both companies were transitioning towards data mesh. And that's how I ended up in the governance field. But that does not mean that I haven't been in that field. So prior to that, I was focused on data quality. And I got really excited when data mesh came along because that's exactly where you want to get the quality controls into place on that left push. But that's another topic for another day. I'm pretty excited to be part of this group today and to delve into the questions that Andrew has in store for us. Maarten, I leave it
Yes.
to you.
Thanks, Kidda. Hi, everyone. My name is Maarten. I'm currently the co-founder and CEO at Soda. We're a software company. I've actually always been on the software side. It's been 12 years now. First 6 were at Colibra, where I think Colibra was early in their the market for really data governance. And kind of one of the reasons why I left there after 6 years, I wanted to start on my own, was that we needed more tools, more engineering tools really to operationalize data governance. And then a year or 2 later came data mesh, which was right in our wheelhouse, which was fantastic. So yeah, with the experience that I have over the last 6 years is more building tools for data engineers, also in open source. So we get to serve quite a big community, which is fantastic. Some of you might know, Soda Core is that project that also implements like data contracts. I'm sure we'll get into these things. Very exciting stuff. But yeah, super happy to be here. And Andrew, I'll let you take it away from here.
Thanks, Maarten. What I would say is, please, if you've got any questions, we encourage you to put them in the respective channels and we will receive those, and we're obviously ask those questions as we go, or we'll perhaps do a mop-up at the end for anything that's not been covered. So thank you, panel. I suppose the first question really that we want to unpack today is, what do you see as the key challenges in implementing federated governance across different domains in a data mesh environment? Is probably the key question. So maybe start with Karin.
Yeah, the key challenge of implementing. I would say the first challenge is to agree what does federated actually mean. Because for me, I've been in different companies and it means different things. So that's definitely like one of the key topics. Like first agree on where are you aiming? Who decides what? And align on that. So that would be the first challenge, I would say. But otherwise than that, I think it also depends on where are you coming from, right? So do you have a central data governance team already? And then you will have a certain other types of challenges implementing federated than if you come from nothing and you want to start to implement federated governance from scratch and you have nothing. And then you will have other challenges. So for me, it's all about like, where are you coming from? Yeah, I think
that's super useful. And you mentioned obviously that the idea of federated. From your perspective, what would your definition of federated be, Karin?
Well, for me, it's more about like, okay, so you assign the ownership within the different domains, and then you get together all the domains, and then you kind of together decide on whatever needs to be decided. Then of course you could have like a governance supporting that, but the decision actually lies within the together on things that needs to be central, and then on things that shouldn't be central, then the domains decide themselves. And of course, like in federated governance, you should really aim for having the central part as small as possible, and then try to delegate as much as you can out to the domains. But that of course also depends on a lot of things, what you can move to, or what you can move to the domains. So I'm sure we will get into that. But that's,
yeah, sure. Maarten, your thoughts? Definition. No, thanks, Karin. Maarten, what's your thoughts on the general question and what Karin's also been exploring?
Yeah, I think I think what's great is because with data governance in the past, I think it's really started more central because we're thinking about policies and things that everyone needs to do around data. What is good practice really with data? And that's where it started. And we kind of pushed down those responsibilities into the different domains, especially in larger companies. So I think that was one move that you saw. And I think what's happening now, especially with the advent of data engineering and data mesh, etc., is really also you see these local teams building data products, and they have different levels of maturity, right? And they need their own autonomy as well. So we kind of see this nice dichotomy in a way in which there's a bit of probably a push towards, hey, we want less architecture and less of tools decided for us. We want to decide ourselves. But there's still this very strong need for almost every company to adhere to some enterprise-wide things. And the question really has nowadays, I think, with data mesh become like, how do we do that in a very scalable way? So I think it's a very logical transition, I think, that we're making, and it's a really exciting time as well because there's a lot of demand regarding to like how do we create tools and systems and mechanisms, processes that are scalable for everyone, that are very easy to adopt. They're not complicated. They're data governance often has this it's extra work. It slows me down. I don't want to do it. So it's a very interesting challenge to think about how we can do that in a non-intrusive way, in a way that's it's built into the process, and sometimes people don't even have to know they're doing good governance. It just becomes natural, and it's because we've built a great product for everyone in the organization to use. So that's a bit my 2 cents on it. I think it's a very good evolution. It's definitely one that comes with challenges. Because I think traditionally with data governance, we've worked more with IT teams, right? And you had architects, for example, helping modeling data, which was very important. We also had some technical support around, some of the old tools that we were using that required a lot of support. And now all of a sudden we're shifting that towards product and engineering teams that help us. And there we can really think about how do we design this in the ideal world, which is really exciting in my opinion, but comes with its challenges. We need product managers, for example, in order to do that. So that's quite the transition.
Yeah, absolutely. No, super interesting thoughts there. Kinder, what's your thoughts on the key challenges for implementing federated governance?
I think Karin and Maarten said a lot of hit it home, basically, how to define federation, for instance, because even that within the same company will be different. And the challenge here is, and again, that's to Maarten's point, the different domains that you are giving them this new responsibility will have different maturity level. And that maturity level depends on the composition of their domains, the use cases that they have, and a lot of different things that makes up that domain. And so you might find yourself, and this is what I've seen in practice, even within the same organization that you're rolling out data mesh, that you're starting to push more and more governance standards. Some domains, you're going to have to be more hands-on. And other domains, you're going to find yourself that you can step back earlier in that journey. Obviously, at the beginning, you always need to make sure that you go ahead of time before you roll out anything, make sure that any literacy gaps is bridged. So at the beginning, it's hands-on, but as you move throughout that journey, you will see some domains are faster and are more adaptable, and they have the right mindset. They have already the people that are needed, and you can already step back and go into that fantastic role, which I think is, on the other hand, I always call it a golden opportunity for governance, because for so long we've been seen as the police, and because we've been isolated. And I think with data mesh, this offers us an opportunity, because it's all about empowering the domains. It's all about working with them very closely and making sure that they all can be autonomous. And that means that the set of standards that you are producing from the governance side of things, it has to be a thin layer of standardization that works across the board, but still gives leeway for the domains to create the standards that they need that fits their use case. And that means you naturally need to be in that conversation and co-creation process. And so you move away from that central entity where all knowledge disseminate and move towards a more collaborative approach. So I'm moving from the challenge and I'm taking us a little bit more to the positive side.
No, absolutely. And I think that you've sort of done a really good segue into one of the other key questions that we have in terms of how organizations balance that sort of domain autonomy with the needs for consistent data standards and practices. And I think you've started, Kinder, to sort of unpack that there. Maybe you can sort of bring that to life, flesh it out a little bit more as to how you actually get that balance in organizations, which I'm sure is a tricky challenge.
It is an absolutely tricky challenge in the sense that it takes us data people out of our comfort zone, and that is out of our data world and out of our frameworks. And that is, you need to speak the language of the business. So you need to deep dive and go to the domains, understand their use cases, and co-create with them. And one of the most practical things that you can do is have a working group. Have a working group and have different people from the different domains. And this is not the domain leads, but the people who are actually doing the work, right? The product managers, the analysts, the data engineers, and start having these conversations, talk about these basic standards, and you will hear people then raising their hands saying, but that doesn't work for our use case. And giving them that platform to speak up and to give feedback, and seeing that you're taking their feedback and you're tweaking things when there is a possibility. That's when things starts to work. And that's where there is a shift of, we're not the only entity that is producing. Obviously, the oversight and ensuring that adoption is happening and ensuring that we're empowering the domains by giving them the onboarding that they need, the trainings and all of that. But it shifts in the sense that they feel like they are also owning that, and they're also co-creating, and they are making the standards and tweaking them to fit their own use cases. And this is when you start seeing that balance between the autonomy and the consistent standard layer that you need to put. But there is obviously an art to it. Which standards can you actually say, okay, this is the red line, we cannot actually change that. This is usually when it comes to security and compliance. These are the things where you have to put a hard line, and where can you actually give a bit of leeway. And that always depends on what it is you're actually looking at. But it's not easy, but I think that's the interesting side of it and the interesting challenge that, at least for me, is very exciting.
Yeah. And just on that point about forming a working group and bringing everybody together, is that something that you've done in your organization or seen as a vehicle to actually get engagement? Because that feels to me as being quite a critical step. People have to be brought into this and come along to the meetings in order to get those sort of benefits. So I'm guessing that is quite a key milestone for the success of these sorts of things.
Absolutely. So these working groups definitely have to be bringing value to the people who are attending. And it starts bringing value when it's interactive, and it's not in the sense that we're the governance people. We're coming, we're going to tell you what you need to do and what is right and what is wrong. But it is about giving them space and allowing them to tell their stories. What has worked for you? What hasn't worked for you? We've pushed out this particular feature from the platform. Tell us, criticize it. And allowing for that failures to come up to the surface so we can talk about them. So once you create a space where it's a two-way, not even a two-way, but it is an X-way collaboration and communication between the different domains, that's when you start bringing value, because the domains want to hear from the other domains. How did things go for you when you first onboarded? What were the lessons learned? What were your perhaps workarounds? And once you start creating that space, that's when you start seeing people engaging more and more.
Yeah, makes sense. Maarten, what are your thoughts on this sort of striking the balance and how best to go about getting that balance in an organization? Sorry, Maarten, you're on mute.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No.
So how I think about this is that in general, the less kind of overhead, let's put it this way, or the less centralization, I think I'm a pro of doing as few as limited as possible. And if you need to do it with a product mindset. Now, what that means is really think about treat the people that you're building this for as your customer, right? And you're going to build an experience for them. And if they're not happy, you didn't succeed, right? And do so in a very kind of iterative. We start small. We work on the first principle. Don't make things complicated. We really start with small increments, and then what you see is if you treat that person for example, within the domain, let's say data platform engineer, right, or a product manager there. You just treat them as your customer and slowly build and iterate and work together. And that goes a very, very long way. And I would never go in with, oh, these are all the things we now need to start doing. You're going to lose people in the process, right? So it's more my practical minds. That will be at least my tip around how to do that. Is really start light on what you need to do centrally. And focus on your customer being happy.
That makes perfect sense. This idea of filtering out and working out what the priorities are, is that something that this group needs to actually agree upon, or is it something that you actually give them some options? Because I've been in meetings where it is a challenge. Everybody has a particular perspective, so it's always challenging to get consensus.
Yeah, I think ultimately it's about what's important to the business, right? Is it really about, and I think you could go back to fundamentals of like a business case building. Is it about, revenue? Is it about cost? Is it about risk? That's something that executives can answer or should be able to answer or give you as inputs. And then it's, of course, going to be dependent if you have a domain team that works on customer data versus a domain team that works on something completely different. Of course, they're going to have different priorities. And I think your leadership should be able to guide you in the right direction as to what is most important, whether it's through an OKR framework that they're using to communicate, strategy and objectives, or something else. But yeah,
that makes sense. We have a question in from Catherine Searle, who's, and I'll pose it to you, Maarten, but we then involve Karin and Kinder. And she's saying, what is your advice for those setting up a governance function for the first time? What would you do first?
It's a very good question. I think so. I'll go back to the analogy, right, to the tradition, to how I've seen it been happen, and then maybe reflect on that for a second. I think traditionally it's been about the data governance policy, it's been about ownership, and it's been about definition. I think those three areas, and the policy kind of constitutes how we should be treating data, etc. It's more of a visionary type documents where we want to get to and what good data management practice looks like. Then ownership, because in traditionally that's where we focused. So we had so many differences in even what was a customer, like what constitutes a customer, like there are so many people were misaligned. So we didn't have the basics down. We didn't even know that there was a different way of defining something in another part of the organization. So for that, you need to have or identify people who can bring this towards such a kind of a decision in which you either adjust the terminology or at least you're just aware of it now and you've defined it in both areas. And from that point on, you can move forwards. I think this is the traditional way of doing it, and I'll probably let Karin and Kinder, you guys are more practitioners.
Yeah, perhaps hand over the conversation to Karin, who's been waiting patiently. Karin, your thoughts?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, these things that you mentioned that like constitutes like the tradition of governance, I still think it kind of holds, right? You need to do these things as well. So I would actually, if I would set up a new data governance function, I would probably start there, but then again, it depends on what you want to achieve also. What's the point of starting a governance? What's the pain point? Because I would actually, usually that is the pain point, so that's why you start it up. But maybe it's something else. So I would really like, first of all, okay, what is the problem that we are trying to fix by having a governance function? Because governance means so many things, and they can do so many different things and focus on different things like compliance, or as you say, business glossary, or whatever it is. But they all solve different problems. So make sure that you know the problem that you're trying to solve before setting up a governance function, I would say, and then have a priority on that.
Yeah, that's really good advice. Kinder, your thoughts?
I agree with that. The challenge that I see a lot of people in the governance field do is that they go at it in a very, let's say, not pragmatic way, but it almost feels like there's a standard roadmap that everyone starts with, and it's completely isolated and disconnected with what the business is trying to do. And so eventually there's this isolation, and there's no way for the governance people to explain why getting a data catalog is of value. And so my advice, and what I've always done in the past, is understand what are the goals of the company, what are the use cases, what are the P1s. You look at one P1 and you start connecting that with the data that needs to unlock that. So for instance, one thing could be, if you're in a supply chain company, you want to improve delivery times, you're looking at supply chain optimization. Start thinking, which data do I need for that? You probably need the supplier data, you need the shipping data, inventory data. And then dig into that. What are the problems there? And all those foundational things that you need to bring in from the governance side, whether it's assigning ownership, whether it is discoverability, that is where you can sneak them in, like kind of guerrilla tactics there.
Yeah.
And just focus on that use case, not rolling out ownership everywhere, not rolling out the data catalog everywhere, only on that particular use case. Show the value and that success story, and then take it from there and roll step by step. So I'm not a fan of big bang initiatives. I'm really targeting use cases, and that what's worked for me in the past.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, and we have a sort of statement that we use in our organization about this idea of data governance almost by stealth, which is partly under the radar. You know, it's doing it incrementally. It's, as you say, waymarking a use case as a vehicle to demonstrate what you can achieve. So rather than doing a big bang, that's an approach that's worked very well, and it also plays to the realization that there's not a limitless pot of money for some of these things. So you have to invest where you're going to make the most impact. That's really useful. There's another question coming from Sean McClintock, who's asking, how does organizational culture come into play with establishing data governance? Do you think change management and a focus on culture is important? So perhaps we'll start with yourself, Kinder, and go back the way.
Yes, it's absolutely vital. The reason for that is you need the people on your side. You either have people on your side or you're going to have pushback. And that all has to do with that change management, specifically if we are talking about data mesh, where there is a lot of change. There is a new responsibilities that are coming people's way. There are a lot of question marks. What does it mean for me to own the data? What does it mean to produce a data product? And all of that has to be addressed. And the fundamental thing is the why. Why are we actually doing this? That's one thing that we need to address. The second thing is understanding where everyone is on their journey and how are they ready, and how we can empower them to reach that level where they feel comfortable and empowered to start doing the things that we're asked them to do. And this is from the literacy side of things, from the budget that a particular domain has, to get new people coming in, perhaps to who weren't there before. It's about providing the technology, the data platform, and the tooling that allows them to do the things as in a lightweight as possible. So the whole culture and the change management is a huge part of it, and there's a lot of strategies that you can put into play to make sure that you have the right mindset there. And that's whether with through data literacy program, whether it is by creating some kind of events that brings people on board with what it is that you're pushing. So lots of things that you can do, and it's extremely important, and it has to be a focus point for at least one of the data teams that are pushing for that.
Makes sense. Karin, your thoughts on culture and what role it plays?
Yeah, a lot, I would say. I completely agree with Kinda there. Definitely, I mean, the culture is everything. Culture eats strategy for breakfast, or whatever the saying is. But
Yeah,
you need the people. I mean, it's governance is it's all about people, communication, and like change management. I mean, that's like 90% of the work is there, and then like 10% of the work is somewhere else. Because when you have people with you, you have the culture is working for you instead of against you, then you can actually make things happen. So I completely agree with Kinda here.
perfect. Maarten, have we got three violent agreements, or have you a different point of view?
I was more thinking about giving a tip really than anything else, because of course it is extremely important. I think the tip would probably be to think about your organization as it is today and how that's different from others. What are some cultural traits of the organization that you're in, and how will that impact your change management rollout? Like, and what do you need to do actually to make sure that you do it in a culturally compliant way in? So having just in the beginning, think a little bit about the culture that you're in, try to compare and contrast that, and then take that with you on your journey.
Makes a lot of sense. P. Smits is made an interesting point here that they're saying that data governance is also a company-wide sort of case. So in the instance of data mesh, should this be a sort of central instance of the company plus the entities in each domain, if that makes sense? So it's almost bolting on governance on top of what's already there, I think. And any thoughts on that one?
So the question is really like, okay, so do we do governance for the rest as well, or
yes, should you do a central instance plus the entities in each domain? Is that an approach? Have you seen that work?
Isn't that the federated model in a way? Like federation is like you have some sorts a little bit central, but then a lot of freedom, and you try to push down to everyone else. That was my definition maybe of how federated works.
Yeah.
no one knows what it is.
Yeah, and I think that goes full circle to what Karin was saying, being clear on it. But yeah, arguably, in some organisations we've worked in, you have a central core, and then the entities flex that. So is that not federation? So interesting point. Kinder, any thoughts from yourself?
I was holding back because I wasn't sure I understood the question, because in fact, it is what I interpret as federation. So you definitely need some kind of a central entity, but it is not probably as big as it used to be, because it's only there to act as a guidance, but it's not the entity that's doing the heavy lifting. So the heavy lifting and the extended arms is in fact in the domains.
No, that makes sense. Slightly pivoting away from what we've been talking about there, Robin Adam is asking, he in his experience, a lot of effort is required to execute governance within the domains, and how far are we with computational federated governance? And he's wondering whether there's any good examples or stories people might have of having deployed that to overcome some of these issues.
Yeah, there are definitely examples out there, I would say. There are, I mean, it's moving there, I think, in a lot of, I mean, of course it depends of the company, but there are good examples of where you can actually see computational governance happening. So, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, Maarten, are you seeing it in your area?
For sure, I think so. Computational, I always, when I first read it, I was like, oh, that's such a complicated way of saying what we're actually going to do. What we're doing is we're building some form of automations or ways to do this at scale, right? So we're kind of building products for data management. And I think the best possible example today, and that's why there's a lot of kind of fuzz about it, is data contracts. I think that's a very good example, because in a data contract, you specify what the data looks like, maybe some SLOs, maybe some you extend it to who can have access to that, or their access requests are granted by default if you're in this and that group. Or so there is that is computational at work, really. Contract is always executable, and it automates something. If you change the configuration, like, oh, this group now has access to, we make sure that is enforced on your data source, right? You don't have to think about that anymore. Or if you say, well, the data quality check on it, well, it's done, like it's enforced, right? You can even stop your pipelines when it's not as expected. So I think in that realm, data contracts is probably a very good example of how that is happening in the field. And I think both of you, Karin, can have experience doing this, I think, as well. So
yeah. Perhaps hand it over to Kinder in terms of her experience of computational federated governance and what you're seeing.
I would say I feel the pain, Robin. And actually, I'm a little bit not pessimistic, but I've been feeling that it's been a bit slower than what I personally would want to see when it comes to automating, right? So data contracts, I'm extremely happy that over the past 2 years, we're seeing a huge push and many successful implementations from Andrew Jones at HelloFresh, Gable with Chat Sanderson's, and Soda now with the data contracts. I'm extremely happy. Something that we've been working on since 2018, I think. So I'm happy that now we're seeing some automation there. I think we're definitely heading in the right direction, and I'm seeing more and more people in the industry pushing towards having the right infrastructure that enables companies to move quicker in their journey. But I'm still seeing a lot of companies struggle trying to build their own data platform just because there is this gap in the market. And so I am optimistic that we're going to head there, but I understand the pain, and I think a lot of people are going through that pain. Some areas we're much more advanced, like with the data quality and with data contracts, but in other areas, I think we still have room for improvement, and I'm seeing a lot of improvements. And talking with the people of the tooling, I'm seeing that in the roadmaps, but I feel the pain.
Yeah, that's a really good segue probably to one of the other questions that we've got today, which is, I think many organizations have a centralized view of data. So how does data governance evolve when you're transitioning away from a very centralized data architecture to a more data mesh approach? You know, what are the things that you need to think about as you move from maybe that more centralized view of data to a federated one that we've been talking about today? Karin, I don't know whether you've got any thoughts on that.
Yeah, sure. I think one of the things, I mean, obviously, before you had like a central place, you have a central team, and then you can always talk to them when it comes to at least the analytical layer. It's like, okay, but now everyone can do the data products. So lots of the interactions. So of course you want to make data or compliance, security, and ethical policies easy to understand. I mean, it has to be super easy. So it should almost be like governance as a product, right? So
Sure.
That's the switch, I think, that really needs to happen when you move to a data mesh. Otherwise it will become a mess. So it's really I think that's the biggest change. But it's also, I would back to Kinda's point, it's like it's also an opportunity because now you probably have some kind of platform where you can work with, and you can make a computer, you can actually automate things. It's really an opportunity to be more compliant and more secure and more ethical because you can actually automate it. And I think that's, for me, that's the biggest change, going from like writing policies to actually making sure that, it's super easy to use.
Yeah, and I think that's absolutely a super important point today, that if you can sell that benefit, then far more people will buy into and see the value of data governance and what you're seeking to achieve. So that's a really key takeout. Maarten, your thoughts in regard to the evolution from a center to a more federated approach?
Yeah, I think so. You're not doing it anymore yourself, so you have to have others do it. So it needs to be very easy to do and very well documented. And I think that the challenge really is that within data governance, it was not necessarily a skill that we were looking for when building data governance teams, to build tools for other people in the organization. It's new, right? So that is a very big challenge to get that knowledge on board. And then to also release or bring these tools in the right way to your end users. I think it's a big shift. It's a very exciting one. We go from indeed writing policies to help build stuff, which is fantastic. So
yeah,
I see it in a very positive light in the end, but a challenging change nonetheless.
Yeah. Cool. We have an interesting, very specific point here from P. Smith. So again, they're saying, is a data catalog a must-have when you're moving to data mesh? Kinda? There's a few shaking of heads. Maarten shaking his head.
Yeah, I would say yes. I would say yes, because of the discoverability side of things. However, for instance, now at Prima, we still don't have a data catalog, and that is not opposing our journey towards a data mesh. It does support because it brings that discoverability, but there are other ways where you can, in places where you can show ownership, where you can show the schema, or you can show the lineage. So it's not, I don't have a data catalog, I can't start the journey. And that I see in a lot of different areas as well. Maarten will hate me for this, but also data quality, right? If you have a data quality tool, fantastic. It boosts efficiency, collaboration, the automation, the scalability. You need it eventually, especially if you want to move towards data contracts. You need that automation to place, but that does not mean you cannot start yet and already bring a lot of value into place. So it's a yes, but with a disclaimer.
Yeah. Okay. Maarten, do you want to respond to that before I hand over to Karin for her thoughts?
I agree. Look, but the reason why I was not shaking my head no is because you might be pulled into doing things that you actually shouldn't be focused on. Because a catalog comes from a place where we just index everything. And in data mesh, we want to build components that are reusable, and we want to make those available, which means if you're just starting with data mesh, you would have nothing in your data catalog. And if you have a whole bunch of stuff there, well, it's not a data product. So all I'm saying is you might be pulled in the wrong direction. You might be pulled in a direction of indexing everything you have, building this form of repository of metadata and information. And that's not necessarily contributing to what you set out to do if you're on that data mesh journey.
Interesting. Really interesting. Karin, your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. Sorry.
I was just going to say, is a data catalog a must-have, or?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, or maybe you don't need a data catalog, but you need data discoverability, right? You need that capability somehow. Is it a data catalog? Maybe, but could it be something else as well? Yes. It's maybe it's not a traditional data catalog that you need. But a lot of the data catalog vendors today fill that need. So But the discoverability part is key in data mesh, I would say, in order to really make it scale. But I completely agree, you don't need it in the beginning.
Interesting. Well, hopefully that's some insight for those listening. I'm conscious that we're sort of getting very close to the end. So the question from Catherine Seal is quite timely because she's asking the panel, what have you found really didn't work when introducing or maturing data mesh governance? And she's asking, what was your biggest mistake and what did you learn from that? So there's a set of questions. So Karin, do you want to start with yourself? Your thoughts on what you've learned and what didn't work?
Yeah, don't run too fast. I mean, it's one of those things, like, for me at least, I mean, this is my personal experience I'm sharing here on the things that I did wrong. I read the book, I got all excited, I was like, oh my God, this is like so exciting. And then it's like, and then the company has decided, okay, we're going to do data mesh. But getting people on board, and you need to have this. I mean, it's change management, right? So you need to start reading books like this, like Leading Change. It's that's what you should do, because it's actually really about change management, and it's about so don't run too fast. Don't ask for too much in the beginning. So I did that wrong, completely wrong in the beginning. So I'm learning.
No, that's spot on. Yeah, all about change management and walk before you can run. Maarten?
Small iterations that create value. If you don't create value and you've been at it for months and months and months, there's something wrong, I think. So the more you can shorten it down and focus on outcomes, I think the better.
Perfect. And any mistakes that you've learned from? Anything that you've gone, I wouldn't do that again?
I would say too long iteration. Like just literally the opposite of what I recommended was the mistake.
I could add to that. So it's also small iterations, but also because that I got my hands burned on that, is especially on those first data products where you're looking at the governance side of things, pick a data product that is simple. And by simple, I mean try and avoid sensitive data and PII data, because you're already starting with something new. The team that is going on that journey with you is also going out of their comfort zone, and you need to put already a lot of complicated things. So that adds a whole layer of complexity that you don't necessarily need in that first 1, 2, 3 data products. As soon as you have that going, then you can add that layer of complexity. So that's kind of one of the lessons learned that I had.
No, that's really good shout. And I think there's some great takeaways there for people who are going through this journey. So that's spot on. Shout out to those that are listening. If you have any more questions, please fire them on now. There's a couple that have come through that we've not covered, and one of them is from Richard Atkins, and he's talking around data governance far more than just tooling, and we've just been talking about cataloging. However, has anybody had any good or bad experience of GCP Dataplex? So that's a very specific bit of technology. So I don't know whether any of the panelists have actually used that bit of kit.
Yeah, I have used it. Yeah.
Good, bad? Leading question. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say it depends on what you want to achieve, right? It's like and also depends on your tech stack and what you're in. I mean, are you just staying in GCP, or what's the overall strategy for your implementation?
Yeah.
If you're looking for something that's like multi-cloud, no, Dataplex is not the thing to go to, I would say. But if you're having just GCP, just that, and it's a small implementation, yeah, maybe that's the thing to go to. but otherwise I would go for something else.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult because we can't obviously quiz Richard, but it sounds like if he wants to unpack that some more, Karin, I'm sure you'd be happy to
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
unpack that with him after the session today. Maarten, Kinder, any thoughts of GCP Dataplex?
Didn't have any first-hand experience, so I leave that to Karin to unpack it. Practical
Okay.
knowledge is always better.
Okay, that's cool. Further question come in from Marina Pelufo. She's saying, in a federated context, visibility across domains is key, but how do you ensure that that happens in an automated way? So it comes back to the computational bit, how you can have visibility across all your domains. And is it achievable in an automated way, I suppose?
I think you can maybe I'll just give a first stab. I think you can build
Yeah,
that into, right? So you can very simple example. You're doing data quality checks on data in a certain domain. I mean, make them available to everyone. Make them available in your catalog in any way that you use to share your data, etc. Just make that visible to the rest. It's for many reasons important. I think the most important reason is ultimately because it creates some level of competition as well internally. The more you start seeing others do better than you or you're part of the organization, it's a good way. It's a good carrot, let's say. Governance is very often the stick, so we need more carrots.
That's a really valid point. Kinder, Karin, have you used this sort of internal competition as a mechanism to move things along? Kinder's smiling, so I'll perhaps turn to you.
I'm smiling a lot because Maarten and I are partners in crime. We did that before at HelloFresh, a data quality hackathon. And it was bringing people into that mindset of competition on data quality, right? So it was about onboarding them. What do we mean by data quality? What is our process there? And it was specifically about bringing visibility on the data quality on their data products within the different domains. And we had them design their dashboards of, okay, what do you want to see? What are the metrics that you want to see? So there's a lot of things that you can do, and definitely I encourage to bring that visibility, because that is what actually, it's not about shaming people, but it is about that transparency and having that fighting competition. And I'm a big fan of that.
Yeah, no, I've used that in a number of different clients. Well, it's a bit of carrot and a bit of stick, but it goes a long way to get people to get stuff done. Karin, have you used that technique?
Yeah, a bit, but I'm wondering, maybe I misunderstood the question, but wasn't the question like, how do you make sure that everything is discoverable, or like all the data products or all the data, or what was the question?
Yeah, I think in its broadest sense, it was about visibility and ensuring, yeah, you make it visible to everybody, but can you do that in an automated way?
Yeah, like visible, like that you have a data product, or like so you don't have like dark data happening, or like that you share data. Yeah, it depends on what the question is.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But I guess it's like what you also talked about is like, how do you incentivize people to do the right things? I think that's something that I mean, or whether we were talking about making sure that you make your data discoverable, or that you have the right data quality and you make that visible, or that's really, and I think that's kind of a skill set that we as a governance, working with governance, really like need to think about. Like, and here I think like what I have used a lot when it comes to that is systems thinking, and that's something that I learned recently that I think is like it's something that's super important. Like how do we make sure that things are happening the way they should in this whole system, not like this single data product, but like how do we make sure that people actually share the data? How do we make sure that they care about data quality? And I think that's, yeah. lots of different things that you can do there, but that's it's one of those new things that you need to learn, I guess.
Absolutely, and if that feels like a whole new webinar in itself to actually talk about how you actually work out in a very complex environment, everybody's doing the right thing and systems are doing the right thing. So I think that's a really good shout out in terms of that. But maybe that's one for Paul for another day. I'm mindful we're a few minutes away. I'm guessing there's no more questions come in. I think we've exhausted all of those on the chat. So many thanks to people. Yeah, I've just had confirmation that's everything at the moment. So please, if there is any burning questions in the 11th hour, then let us know now. Really keen that obviously we bring this to a close. I think it's been a really lively discussion and we've unpacked an awful lot as we've gone along. So a massive thanks to Kinder, Maarten and Karin for taking the time out and unpacking their insights on data governance in data mesh. And back to yourself, Paul.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was a really engaging conversation. Lots of great questions. So thank you to our audience for asking those questions. Thanks for all of our panelists, and thank you, Andrew, very much for moderating. I would say, yeah, I really love this model, having this panel. So if people have other ideas for what they want to hear, let me know. Reach out in Slack or any other way you can. On LinkedIn, you can find me there, Paul Au, last name AU, or you can reach out to any of our panelists and let them know what you want to hear about. Yeah, we'll try and line up some more panels. Yeah, I think the next one that we want to tackle is data products. So stay tuned for that. Yeah, thank you everybody so much. Really appreciate your time. Really great response, and again, great engagement from our audience. So yeah, have a nice day, and we'll see you on the next one. All right,
Thanks.
bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Cheers.